This round will be closed, so there will be no feedback or digitalization afterwards. Feel free to approach us tomorrow or later tonight after break to announce to get the digital feedback. But unfortunately, no feedback will happen now. So the motion for that today, this House believes that all government powers should actively embrace their negative history through school curriculum. In the proposition, we have Team Netherlands 2. In opposition, we have the Moroccan national debate team. My name is Neil, I'm from Denmark, I'll be chairing this debate. This is Israel, so my way. The gentleman over here with the timekeeper. If there's no questions, then I'd like to, without further ado, welcome anyway to open the case from team opposition. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the Dutch colonies, 10 million people died because of our tendency to become rich and kill them better. But yet, the only thing I learned at school was about the greatness of a country in the Golden Age. And every time a Dutchman sees a rampant, he's proud. But what he does not know is that his paintings are paid with blood money. And we think that's very important to stress to our children. And therefore, I'm very proud to propose. In this debate, we define colonialism as European empires taking advantages of other countries and people through taking the land on war. And an example of this is the slavery in the 17th and the 18th century. And with embrace we define as actively stimulation, no matter of the cause, because today in the history books there are only positive points. We want to bring the negative story too. In my speech, I'm going to explain why we think it's so critical by giving you two arguments. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the right to know and why it fits in the education system. Secondly, I'm going to talk about practical impacts and I'm going to talk about the political change that will cause this. Because we think that schools have the obligation to tell the students the whole truth, because they have the right to know. And I have three reasons for that. Firstly, we think every person has the right to know about their identity. Because we think your country of origin is very important for your identity. And we think everyone has a certain national pride for their country, and we think that's also part of that identity. And that you have the right to know as much as possible about your ancestors, their behavior, and your identity. And we think that's especially true when your national pride is paid with, for example, money was taken off from countries in Africa. So we think that's very critical in this debate. An example of this is governments that are actively supporting adopted children once you get in touch with the birth mother, because they accept the fact that it's so important to know who your ancestors are and who you about your identity. We think this is the same for this motion, and we think it's the same for letting people know what the behavior of our ancestors are. Secondly, a point about why you have the right to know all the information, because we think governments have obligations to give citizens all the information. Because we think everyone has the obligation to tell all relevant info and not hide any info that can be relevant to them. An example of this is when a police is taking you with ample witness statements. We consider it as immoral when you do not tell that you know who killed the victim. And we think, although this is maybe not theoretically lying, we regard it as practically lying, because we think that in those situations you know people want to know it and you know people it's relevant for them. And when you are not telling it in those situations, we think it's very bad, it's very immoral. Are there any viewers? No, you agree with our points. Great. Thirdly, about the right to receive complete information and correct information on schools. Because we think, because the goal of schools is to prepare children for the future. And they can do this by providing knowledge. For example, math, math is very useful for further jobs. For example, political knowledge is very useful if you have to vote. For example, sexual education is very handy if you're older. And we think this is relevant, and therefore schools have to tell it.
So you said that learning this is necessary for the future. But what if the future, once these people learn about the histories, what if they don't value it the same way? What if they believe, they take from this history that, oh, maybe slavery wasn't so bad. Maybe what happened in that colony wasn't so bad.
Thank you. We think there are proper ways to explain why slavery was very bad. For example, that in the British colonies, 20 million people died, and we think that fact will be a huge impression on young people, because like everyone knows it's not good to die, and we think when it's 20 million times, you will doubt about the origin of your own country. But more important, we think also that it has some political changes, and why people will change their behavior towards countries, and that's something I'm going to explain in my second argument. But my third mechanism for my first argument is about the right to receive complete information on schools. And we think it's necessary to receive full information, because school is there for a lot of people. It's for a lot of people the primary source of education and information. And it's an example of this is a justification of info when you say, yeah, I've learned it at school, so it must be true. And therefore we think schools are a standard for knowledge, especially when schools are funded by the government, and therefore schools are like a role for the government to say what they think is very important. And therefore the school has to set a standard, and the government has set a standard by saying that it's very important that children learn about the bad things that happened in European past. We think it's very relevant for young people to know this, because we think it can change their behavior. And that's something I'm going to explain now in my second argument about political change. Because firstly, we think the current situation and current problems are caused by early colonialism. For example, a lot of problems currently dividing the world. For example, poverty and development aid. For example, the refugee crisis. For example, economical refugees. And we think we can learn people, when we learn people that the behavior in the past was very bad, we think we can change the voting, what they vote, because we think a lot of what happened in the past was because of us. There are economical refugees, and there is a refugee crisis, and we have to pay development aid because we misbehaved in the past. We stole a man with slavery, and we stole the resources, for example, oil or rubber in Congo. And we think because of this, we use their resources to build our nations instead of to build our own nations. So, and therefore we think people will see that as a justification for the poverty of the third world countries. We think when the money, and we think people have a stigma towards refugees, for example, because governments are stealing the money of Western governments are stealing the money of people where they have worked for, to put it in the pockets of lazy people who doesn't work, is the stigma. And we think when they learn about our future, and we learn that our country was the cause of the fact that we now have to pay, we think it's less likely to vote against development aid, and we think it's likely that they will vote for parties providing those countries and providing refugees with a home. And we think that's objectively a great idea, because €5, maybe in a country like the Netherlands, can do a great difference. Can do not a great difference, but in third world countries it can. And those are the reasons I'm so proud to be proposition today. Thank you.
Speaking time?
7 minutes. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why it is called the present, Alice Moore's Earl. Ladies and gentlemen, team opposition is obviously trying to continue living in the past. They want us to keep being tied with the past, with our past wrongdoings, and therefore not move on and not go to other alternatives, which are and care about more deeper issues and more urgent issues, which are very important to be spoken about. So first of all, they're saying that our most of past colonial powers, educational systems are raising their kids to be proud of the actions of their nations that they have done before. This is team opposition does not deny this fact. What we are saying in fact is that even the good side of history isn't something we should be so much worried about, because what we should focus in is the values that we draw from the past and not the past itself. Something else they spoke about is that the importance of knowing their ancestors. But we want to ask a question here. Is it important to know your ancestors, or is it important to know who you are as a human being? How will your ancestor influence on who you are today? Go ahead.
I think a huge part of who you are as a human being is the wealth that you have, and the wealth in first world countries do come from those ancestors.
How is the wealth related to who you feel as a human being and the values you hold as a human being? Actually, what should be happening is that you shouldn't be biased by your background and the upbringing you have received. This falls in the critical thinking area, which means that as you get older, you should be focusing on more important. You should be seeing the world through more objective eyes and seeing how different people of different nations see things and challenge the things you have been raised with. And this is something knowing about your ancestors won't help. They're also stating that whenever if you go to school and you are told that 20 million people died in X war, then the kid would automatically think that this is bad. Well, this is a utopic assumption, because not everybody, as we stated, is raised with a background that is stating that, for example, if you were raised as a racist and you learned that 20 million people, black people died in the war, you won't be so much influenced, because you think that these people are bad, and you nearly don't acknowledge the fact that they are full human beings. No, thank you. Now we'll be moving. Now what we're stating here is that we are proposing a much more beneficial alternative than the team proposition is stating here, both to the current and future citizens of the nation. We care about current and future citizens, whether they are white or black, in a way in which much more beneficial than what the team proposition is planning. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to win this debate, we'll have to prove that, first of all, having the bad history of a colonial nation taught in school would be more harmful than beneficial. And there's a note, something you should note here is that we're not denying the benefits. We're just saying that the cons outweigh the pros here. The model we are thus proposing is that we don't teach the awful colonial history in schools anymore, but rather focus on the values that students should be holding before this. We're not for censorship. We would rather propose having a national library that is open to legal adults after school has made sure that they are learning the right values, that they are learning values about equality and that the values of equality and values we should be holding to and human rights for every single person. So, in order to prove that we're right, we have three major arguments. First of all, teaching the awful colonial history of a nation would encourage negative values among students. Second, and the first speaker will be speaking about how this casts discomfort in classrooms and how how this would hurt diplomatic ties between nations, especially between people of past colonial powers and past colonies. So first, this would encourage negative values in the classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine that there is that 5-year-old white kid who has been brought up by racist parents, just as an example, and all his life he's been told that black people are people to fear, black people are dangerous, black people aren't people you should trust, and black people are not so much of full human beings. No, thank you. So you would this boy would go into his school and be taught about the history of black slavery, all the classroom doings of white people towards black people. But this wouldn't impact him so much. In fact, maybe he would agree with enslaving these people, because he doesn't, or at best, then he won't be so concerned about this issue, because all his life he's been taught that these people aren't full human beings. So, ladies and gentlemen, we see that team the proposition is not valuing the minority. They're not valuing people of color, and they're not valuing they're not valuing all the people that should be treated as with full human rights. They're not giving them the opportunity to feel as equal human beings as their white peers, and so on. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we're stating that team opposition is strictly against this motion because of all the harm that we have proved so far, and the harm will be explaining in further in our other speeches.
Ladies and gentlemen, today the opposition is proposing a model that is going to cover up our history, is going to not inform the kids of what they have a right to know, and they will try to make their own kind of information with values, which I'm going to explain is not going to work. But firstly, I'm going to explain why our model does not support racist thinking that slavery is to be bad, or promote negative values as they seem to think it will. So basically, I have two responses to this notion. Firstly, I do not believe this is true. This is because when we are going to teach this and embrace our full past, we're going to be teaching the whole truth, and they are also going to know about the terrible things they did. So any person who is not, fully raised up with this notion that all black people are bad will immediately know that it is a negative thing that we, killed 20 million people on ships because they were crammed and they got diseases. So that's already a very small group, but we also think that teachers will obviously inform the students that, what's happened is bad. They're not going to just bring in this random information, raw information. They're obviously going to give at least a little bit of value information with it, yes, killing people is bad, guys, okay? But besides this, we also believe that the people that will believe that are extreme racists do not believe this because black is an inherently terrible thing to be, but they believe it because of either crime in their country caused by these races or other stigmas around skin color. We believe that through our education we can reduce this. So if we inform kids who grow up in a racist household that it isn't just black people that they are black, therefore they are going to do crimes. There's a higher rate of crime in these races because of the history history of importing slaves to these countries, displacing them. Therefore, we think that even extreme racists can be more informed with our model by teaching them about how their stigmas are bad. Okay, then my second response is that does not weigh up to our argument.
Who do you think gives the trust more, their teachers or their racist parents? If it's a kid that was raised in a racist household.
Thank you. Okay, we believe that obviously people will sometimes believe their parents over the kids, but we have proven that especially the age groups that we'll be teaching these values to, like late teens late teens, will obviously be less completely dependent on their parents as the 8-year-old they propose. We're not going to be teaching complicated colonialism to these groups that they seem to think are going to be targeted. But we also believe that at this stage we can at least reduce some racist incidents by teaching something but not bad, and by showing a historical context. So they have shown no harms to race getting worse or anything. So we think that our models at least show reducing the amount of races by a little bit, and that's still better than anything that the opposition has shown to us. But anyway, so why does it not weigh up? Okay, maybe there's a very, very small group of people who might be proud of their history, and we don't think it's going to happen, but maybe it will. So if this does happen, we don't think that it's going to have a huge impact because they will already know about their history. Their parents are probably going to brag about it. If it's such a positive thing that we killed 20 million black people, I mean, they're going to know about this. But besides this, we also think that they're basically condoning lying to students simply because there's like going to be 10 kids all around the world who's going to be slightly more racist because of the things we're teaching. They're also proposing that we aren't going to bring up political change, as was pointed out in Hensley's speech, just because maybe one person is going to be slightly more racist in the country. So we think it's completely ridiculous. We don't think their points weigh up to ours at all. Then their second point was that we should teach values, not facts. This is their model. And basically they're saying that the ancestors do not affect who you are today, and therefore teachers should teach people how to think and not basically facts about our history. Firstly, we believe that's not true. We do think that ancestors affect who you are today. For example, we believe that also wealth affects you. If you are living in a very developed country, you have a different image about yourself, image about your priorities than someone who's living in a developing country who has no wealth. So definitely these ancestors play a big role into who you think you are as a human being. But we also believe that they also said we want to bring up this critical thinking and this objective view onto what's happening. They're saying that teaching facts is going to corrupt this. We do not think it's true. We're saying that basically their model is telling kids what to think, not the facts, and allowing them to make conclusions from this. They're saying, well, being racist is bad. They're trying to force teachers to say that to the kids, not showing a historical truth, and then allowing their kids to make conclusions from this. So basically, you're limiting critical thinking in your model. And also, we think that by ignoring our past and teaching kids valuable lessons about value, remove the credence. If you say that we were bad, you should not be bad to black people, is not necessarily as impactful as saying you should not be bad people because they are in terrible situations now because we killed millions of their ancestors and displaced them and made their countries be absolutely terrible. We think that teaching kids history and facts gives credence to the values that the opposition wants to learn, and removing this allows kids to not believe in the things that they want to teach them. Okay, so I've concluded why their model will not be successful and why ours is even better at the things they were trying to prove. And now I'm going to move on to the impact of basically being informed on the political sphere. So Hendrik has already pointed out that teaching kids about colonial pasts allows them to know about the reasons why they might be giving financial aid to give countries, allowing them to vote for things that are good. We think this is generally a good thing because Morocco allows for economic development and sees the only reason people are not voting for them is because of rhetoric saying it's unfair. We are teaching these kids that it is fair in a sense. We also think that accepting refugees is good because they arrive and they're not accepted, they're not going to church of crime, and we think that teaching kids about why you should accept them because it's your fault is generally a really good thing. Besides this, that even if it is untrue and people aren't going to change their voting or financial aid and accepting refugees is bad, even in that absolutely extremely unlikely scenario, we think that it's always better to have informed voters. We think that even everybody everyone should know about the historical context, about the things that they're learning about. So it's never going to be, it's always going to be positive to at least give them historical context. And that's why I think in all cases, our impact on the political atmosphere is very positive. I'll give you an example of this. For example, it would be a lot more pleasing for liberals to know that people voted for Donald Trump not because of alternative facts, mistruths that the opposition tried to position on their kids by not telling them the full truth, but instead people voted based on in-depth knowledge on immigration and so forth. We think that it's always better to have informed voters over non-informed voters, and that is why this what we are proposing will help people vote better and also just generally make the political atmosphere a lot better place. Thank you.
7:45.
Okay, I thank you for the speech. So, can Yousra to communicate with some opposition?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud today because I'm standing as team opposition against the motion. So we are as team opposition supporting the fact that former colonial powers should not actively embrace their negative histories through the school curriculum. I will start my speech with some points of rebuttal and after state my two arguments. Team proposition has stated that we, as our model, states that it will cover up your history. You will learn to your children and to the child how they have to think and how they will think, and you will like what they think, and you will like show them like just no, it is not good to be racist or not, without giving them enough information to go an extra mile, to go further and understand why it is important to do not so. And they have also repeated and enjoyed repeating that we are forgetting our past and we are forgetting our past. But let me remind you our model. We have stated that we will embrace and teach about the values and give examples from historic facts, real historical facts. Indeed, no, we are not willing. We will, like I said, teach these values from real historical backgrounds. You have also stated that in your speech that you were like painting those children and new innocent people with blood money. So we as team opposition, we are seeing the values of team proposition as they are encouraging these bloody stories. We encourage this racism. We encourage people to be more racist and more harmed by all the historical facts that have been showed up. They also stated that we have the right to know, and that's why I repeat our model that in fact is about to embrace and teach about these values and all the historical values gained from these negative histories without pushing those people to become racist or to become more harmed by all these negative histories. They also stated that it can change the behavior of those children, and we are 100% with this sentence, and it will badly change this behavior because it is especially negatively, and that's why team proposition we also see that team proposition also want to create a third world war. Proposing this racism and these negative histories that will impact a lot on the new generation. I will now start my speech and give it my two arguments. And I want to remind you that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, and that's why it is called the present, like said Alice Morse early. And we as team opposition, we want a new beginning. We want to fresh start, and we want to make sure that this new refresh will be profitable and benefit for both sides. And that's why we want to embrace and teach about the values and give those negative histories and give examples from historical negative histories. Yes, Lord.
Okay, so you want to give examples from historical context to teach the values about like colonial things. So aren't these, examples going to be the embracing of colonial past? And how is it going to differ from our model?
I want you to remember that our motion for today is this House believes that former colonial powers should actively embrace the negative histories through the school curriculum. And we have given an alternative story that we will teach these negative histories, that giving them this image and the big picture of an example that they will run from it, learn from it, and go further and go an extra mile. So I will bring up my first argument, that is this by giving to the former that former colonial powers should actively embrace the negative histories through the school curriculum, and we're not okay with this because first it will cause discomfort and inequality in the classroom. Let's take, for example, some child. For example, let's take Poland and Germany. Germany as the colonial powers and Poland as the colonized. Imagine if you have two little kids. Imagine you have your own, for example, girl. You have your boy, for example, at one school, an international school that will let those people coexist. Imagine if your child comes to you and tells you, "Oh, I have been, I am proudly, oh, I have hit my Polish friends because my Polish friend because he does so harm for me, and because we, like for example, when we were studying history classes, we have learned that those colonial powers did lots of harm for us, so they won't like to really give him this harm." And I will also came up with another example, and I found a book, and I want you all to know that this book is not taught until university, and and they have the reason why, and this is what we claim to. It is all about the Huckleberry Finn book, written by Mark Twain. You have to know that this story shows up the relations between black people and white people. For example, let's take African black people that were slaves, and European countries that were colonial powers. You have to know that this book shows up and focuses on negativeness and negative historical points, and this won't let us evaluate in a proper manner. This won't let our children evaluate as the manner as we are to go, like I said, to go an extra mile and to go further. And we, as Team Proposition, want to teach slightly those historical backgrounds and smoothly so that they know what they have to do and they get the values after these negative histories. I will now bring up my second argument. My second argument relies on the fact that this will disrupt the educational process and diplomatic ties to nations that used to be colonial powers and colonized nations. And for example, those colonial powers and colonized powers are now allies. Let's say, for example, the case of to stay up with the educational process. Our children will get more and more a negative vision, a bad vision that will go deeper and deeper, about other wars, for example, from colonial powers. This will give a different and distorted image of the world that we want to live in and the world that we have to live in because of all this pluralism that we are living in. So we are going to recreate this hatred and light up this killing sentiment between both countries. Regarding to my part of diplomatic ties to nations, we also can speak about Morocco and France. We now have France has been the colonial powers and and Morocco is now what was the colonized nation. But we are now having great relationships with them because we have known we have known what has happened, and with values. So that's why we believe and we teach that the former colonial powers should not actively embrace their negative histories through the school curriculum. Thank you.
Okay, and I thank you so for this speech, and we're continuing to continue to see politics.
What was the time? What was the time?
The opposition today has told us that we are going to teach racism, that we're going to teach people that colonialism is a good thing. We don't believe that embracing means being positive about it. We believe embracing means that we're going to teach children exactly what we did and exactly why that was bad. And that we accept that this is our history, that we're trying to do better right now. And that was also presented in our arguments about how this is going to affect political change and help these countries better. In my speech, I'm going to talk about, firstly, the two arguments from opposition, namely the values of racism, and then about our arguments, and then about why we win it over them. So firstly, about the values that the opposition gave us. Because they told us that they wanted to teach values instead of facts. That they wanted to teach people that equality is very important, and that they're going to do that through examples. We believe that it's way better to teach values when you include the complete colonial history of these countries. Because in these histories, you can see the harm of inequality, you can see the harm of racism, and the harm of viewing people as non-human beings. Because that harm is slavery, and killing millions of people because we didn't see them as human. We believe that if we include this history, it's way easier to teach people about equality and what we should care about developing the third world. And the examples that they talk about might teach values as well. And we believe they will not do that as effective as our points would, as teaching the full history. So we do what they want to do. Then the second point that they talked about was racism. Firstly, they said that if you're racist, you don't care about slavery, and then they said we're going to push people to be racist. I'm going to address both of these things with 5 responses. The first response, my second speaker already gave, is that there's only a very small group of people that is still extremely racist towards black people. We believe that society is improving and that this group is getting smaller every day. But then I've got 3 reasons about why these people might be convinced when we teach this school history. The first one was given by my second speaker. The teachers will talk about why it's very bad what happened during these colonialist times. For example, why it's bad that we've killed millions and trillions of people and completely crippled the economies of developing countries. But then, the second reason is that racism is usually based upon the stereotype. The stereotype that black people are stupid. And we believe that this comes from the belief that these people are underdeveloped because they are less able and less competent than us. So people will blame the underdevelopment of Africa on the people themselves. But we believe when we teach them about colonialism, when we teach them that it's actually our fault that they're underdeveloped, that Africa couldn't help it, people will see that Africans are not stupid, and that black people are not stupid, and that they're actually just people who are disadvantaged in their lives. Then the fourth reason is that they can finally see a different opinion. Because if you live with your parents, who are very racist, as they've said, all your life, you are not that likely to be confronted with different opinions from your parents. We believe that the school finally provides you with a different opinion, a different view on things, and teach the values that they want to teach. It is more likely that people will be convinced
know what the harm is of teaching people about slavery. Because they've never identified any harm at all. Besides the relationship between countries that they talked about in the second speech, that Morocco will declare war on us because we took their slaves. I believe Morocco knows very well that we've taken their slaves, we've taken their resources, and crippled their economy. But we believe who don't know that are the former colonies, are the former colonial powers, the people who are now teaching their children. We believe Morocco is not teaching their children, we are. So we're not changing anything there. So if they haven't declared war on us now, they will not when we teach our children. So that point is taken out as well. Then on to our own arguments and why they are more important. Because the first speaker talked for a long time about morality, and why it's the right thing to do to teach people about their identity and to teach people the truth. And they've never given any response to this, not even compared it to our points. So I'm going to give you these three reasons again and add the reason for the second. So the first reason was that it's a big part of our identity. And they actually responded to this. They said that ancestry is irrelevant to our identity. But that is not true, because my second speaker already pointed out that colonialism decided the wealth that we have, and therefore the people we are. And I'm going to add that the wealth that we have today decides that we are able to debate. The wealth that we have today decides the surroundings that we're in, decides what kind of habits you have, what kind of life you live. We believe that this decides your identity as well. And therefore, knowing why you are who you are is very important. And it's only done on our side of the house, and therefore we should vote for us. But then secondly, we believe that simply knowing the truth is very important to people. And my first speaker has already explained this very well, it wasn't that, so I'm not going to spend any more time on that. Then thirdly, we talked about why school is specifically a very good place for handing out the knowledge and making people believe and teaching people the truth. We believe, especially for these schools, it's very important that we teach people the truth and everything people should care about.
So earlier in your speech, you mentioned how you agree that you should not teach them the specific details. But is this not contradicting your point that you will actively embrace the negative history? If you do not embrace the details, then you don't embrace the negative
We
history.
should definitely teach the details. We should teach every detail there is, and teach them everything there is to know about colonialism. We don't see why we shouldn't teach the details, and I haven't said that enough. So, on to the fourth point, about why it's a moral thing to do to vote for proposition today. That point was actually added by my second speaker, about how we need informed voters, and how informed voters are the only good voters. Because without information, you can never make a good decision. Because if you make a decision based on incorrect facts, your decision might not represent what you really want to do. For example, if I decide to drink this water instead of a different kind of water, where I haven't really tried the different kind of water, I will not know why I choose for this. This might be a weird example, but if you don't have the complete facts, you cannot choose between two things, and you cannot choose to do something properly. And we believe that because people don't have the right facts, they cannot make the right decision about whether or not to want to help economic refugees, about whether or not to want to help governments in for underdeveloped third world countries, because we should be there for them. And that is the biggest point that we have talked about today, that we are going to change voters' outlook on the world. We are going to make people aware of the fact that we are the reason third world countries are underdeveloped. And that will make people want to change it, because they feel bad for it, because they know that the money that they have right now is not really their money, because it was stolen from a third world country, which it should be given back to, which they will do because now they finally have the complete information. So on our side are the complete moral arguments, are the complete practical arguments, and like the values they want to teach as well. So therefore we vote for proposition.
Thank you again for your speech, and I welcome Mariam to indicate your team on.
clashes, primarily on the morality case. Now, let us clarify our point on morality and on censoring, because team proposition is blatantly ignoring team opposition's model. Team opposition's model, as clearly articulated by our first speaker, is that in high schools, they will not be taught the exact details. We will not actively embrace it. One of the examples brought up by the first speaker was sex education. There's a reason that we don't tell kindergartners sex education, because they're not ready to hear it yet. Because it is not lying if they're going to learn about it in the future. It's a question of whether or not these minors are able or have the correct mindset to learn it at that moment. And this is what team opposition is opposing. We want them to learn about their history, but we don't want it to be mandatory in the curriculum. What we want in the curriculum is for the curriculum to be based on values learned through history. What this means is that we will teach them why slavery is bad, the benefits brought on by freeing the slaves. We do not want to focus on the past because, after all, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, and that is why it's called the present. We would like to emphasize one point. Tomorrow is a mystery. But one sure thing about tomorrow is that in the future, these high school students will be going into society as citizens, as fully fledged citizens with their own beliefs and their own voice in societies. Now, no thank you. Now what team proposition is also ignoring is that we said that they will be able to learn this through a national library that will be made fully available to legal adults. Now, we, again, do not promote censorship. Yes?
Okay, so you are going to provide this library. Do you really think that the majority of people are going to go to this library and read about colonialism? Like, how do you think this compares to forcing everyone to learn about it in school?
Because what you're ignoring is, thank you for that question, because it leads me to my next point, is that everyone learning about it in school is very dangerous. Why? We want to use the example of the United States, who was a colony itself. Now, in the United States educational system, there is a vast difference between how slavery is taught in southern countries, in southern states, and how slavery is taught in northern states. Now, team opposition does not wish to generalize, but there are facts that cannot be ignored. And these are that if you go to the South, the most common phrase that you hear, and this is a fact, is the South will rise again. This is a rally cry from the Civil War, the war on the fight of slavery. Interviews in the South of the United States show that people are not opposed to slavery. People believe in it because through their education system, there are nuances that are missed. Nuances that in education that team proposition is ignored. The nuances to education, no thank you, that the values are not being taught, but merely the facts. The second and first speaker told us that we will teach them the facts and let them learn it by themselves, and let them consider it and come to their own conclusion themselves. But what are these conclusions? Team opposition does not want racism to be an option. That is not an option in our case, because they will be taught the values of equality, of equity, under their argument, they're promoting the same regional ideologies that can only be changed through the education system. Now, yes, the second speaker said that some racist incidences are going to be prevented under team opposition and proposition, that none will be prevented on team opposition. This is false. This is blatantly false. Because what team opposition said in their speech, which is a contradiction, is that they are saying that they will allow them to come to their own conclusions. This suggests that one of the conclusions, no thank you, could be racism. One of the suggestions could be sexism. One of the suggestions could be xenophobia. But under team opposition, these are not options, because they will be taught values that they may not be taught at home. Because education is how we ensure that our society is full of people who understand the past. Not know the facts of the past, but understand why the past and ended up how it is. Because again, yesterday is history. History is not, we are not censoring it, but we are explaining it. We are explaining the outcomes through the values that came out of it. What Team Proposition is doing is they want to show the details and allow these people to infer whatever values that they wish based on their pre-existing values, the values that they get from their parents, who they got from their parents. Now, we would like to clarify something about ancestry, which Team Proposition brought up several times. The reason that Team Opposition said that that ancestry is not relevant is because ancestry is the exact problem. Ancestry is not relevant in their motion to have it detailed because their ancestors, let's take Nazi Germany. How will it feel, as our second speaker said, when in school, students who are Jewish and who are the descendants of Nazis learn about what their grandparents did to each other? That does not provide a safe working environment. And when that Nazi descendant goes home to his grandfather, he will not understand the context. He will not understand the values that were promoted to his ancestor. Because this is not what Team Proposition is explaining in their model on education. Education must be taught through values, not through cold facts. And that is what Team Proposition is suggesting. Now, in conclusion, we will tell you why Team Opposition has won this debate. Because Team Opposition is proposing a common sense model that will educate individuals, future members of society, in the values that they should consider when they vote, that they should consider when they talk to someone of a different background, the values that they should consider when they get hired or when they are hiring people. Values that will matter in society. Because at the end of the day, that is what builds a society. The values that are taught to them. Now, Team Proposition is suggesting that they should infer the values for themselves. They should come to the conclusion for themselves, but they don't understand the dangerous implications of this. While Team Opposition has clearly articulated that the dangerous implications of this far outweigh the possible benefits of Team Proposition. Now, we would like to reiterate that. There is value in learning facts, but there is more value in the model that Team Opposition is suggesting. That the values are what build society, and that is why Team Proposition should win. Team Opposition.
Ali?
I thank Mariam for her speech and welcome back Salma to the our team.
So today we were listening to a debate between a side that would rather teach cold facts or facts that are biased by the teacher, because we have no evidence that the facts they were so badly to teach won't be twisted by the actual person who teaches them, and between a side that doesn't go with censorship, that isn't for censorship, that is fully for knowing about your past and knowing your history, but until you come of age and until you have gained the maturity and knew the right values to know about this past, and therefore make the right decisions. So the opposition has been trying to prove to us that we have said things that we didn't say. They are saying that we said that critical thinking was important, yet we failed to prove it. This is not the case. We're saying that critical thinking is important, but you're not able to think critically until you gain some kind of maturity. And what we're saying here is that we want people to be brought up with values that don't leave racism, sexism, or all kinds of ism or phobia as an option. We don't want this to happen. We don't want this to be existent in our society. And the only way we can teach that is by teaching the values that we're so much proposing. And we also team opposition has also been speaking about the right to know, and the right to know, and how much the right to know your ancestors is important. Here again, we're saying that you have all the right to know, but until you come of age, and let us stress on that. They also spoke about how political change is powered. How political change is powered by your knowledge of history. This is right. This is right when you take the values of this history when you take the values of this history and actively implement them. We're speaking about the values. What we want here is concrete examples from history, not the whole history, to be implemented in order to have these people understanding the values that a nation should be holding. They also spoke about how much of a big role ancestors were playing. As our third speaker said, ancestors aren't something that should be considered. That should be defining your identity. And as she said, if you're a Nazi, if your grandfather was a Nazi, and you go to him and tell him, "Oh, Grandpa, why did you do this? Will this how would this grandfather feel?" I don't. We are concerned about these people as well, and we don't think we should. And therefore, we don't think this is a good alternative. Team opposition is clearly stating that teaching history will encourage negative values. That it will encourage people that had these ancestors that had these major conflicts go against each other, even though they are guilty of nothing. We're stating that this would cause discomfort in classrooms, and we're also stating that this would hurt diplomacies between nations, as our third speaker hasn't failed to prove. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we're very encouraging, of course.
Yeah, that's Salma for his speech, so I can enter to conclude the debate with the opposition about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Germany teaches their children every unbiased fact about the past. And the effect of this is taboo of Nazi parties, because everyone sees that what they did was wrong. And we want the same for every country, because we believe in this plan, because we think it really can improve this world. And I'm going to explain this on four clashes. Firstly, about the effect on the children. Secondly, about their argument on revenge. Thirdly, about the counter-prop, and fourthly, about our case and why they never really reacted on this one. After this, I will make a trailer. Firstly, about the point of view of children and the effect on those children. Because they said 5-year-olds with racist parents will not change their opinion, but Vivian has given 5 reasons why this is not true, and we never got a reaction of them on this point. And then they said, yeah, but it's not good for kindergartners to learn this knowledge. But we are not going to give this knowledge to 5-year-olds, as I said in my plan, but to, for example, 14-year-olds. So the same age value gets, for example, sex education. So we do not believe this knowledge is dangerous for minors, and they never explain why it really is. They never give any examples or any analysis. Then about the revenge point on this side, because they said